Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Spiritual Revolution. My name is Agnieszka, and I am the host of this show. And with me today, I have a number of spectators and a special guest, Mike Nimitz, who is here because of an event that happened last week. Do you want to tell about it, or do you want me to? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Spiritual Revolution. Oh my goodness, hang on a second. My name is Agnieszka. Why is it doing that? Host of this show.
A little bit of feedback there.
I fixed it. All right. Sorry. There was a little bit of an echo. So, Michael, what do you think?
Well, I'm not really sure exactly. I want to try and be brief about this because I know this could get into a lot of different areas. But I think just to do the really short version, someone that I cared about a great deal, um, kind of, and, recently we just had a really good time together, and things were going well, and then things didn't go so well, and then they just got worse. And last week she committed suicide.
Yes.
And although we had a kind of a troubled ending to our circumstance, she was in uh, you know, kind of a difficult state at the time, and there was definitely like a lot of mixed signals, which left me, really confused and troubled in some serious ways. But my heart was involved as well, and I knew she had a troubled past, and so I was really trying to be as understanding as I could. Um, but I don't know. Does this help, or am I just like off on some?
No, that's good. I see that Willow has a question. Willow, feel free to jump in anytime you want. Unless you don't have a question, then don't. But I'm just letting you know.
I did not have a question.
I see your eyebrows go up, and I know that's a sign of you thinking about stuff.
I knew I shouldn't have, done my eyebrows before this. This confuses everybody.
Well, okay, so a little bit of levity, but in reality, so this really close friend of yours for whom you had very, very strong romantic and friendship feelings. You've known her for years. You considered dating her. You dated her for a couple months, and you know she couldn't really she couldn't adapt to a change, and so she preferred to go back to her old life. And when she did, she decided it wasn't worth living, essentially, right?
That sounds right.
And so now this is spiritual revolution. So what lessons, how do you move from here? What do you, first of all, do you want to tell us about the rose?
Well, in one of the later troubled visits, she she brought me some good news and some bad news. And so the good news was she brought me a couple gifts. One of those gifts was two rose bushes. And so, you know, uh, effectively, when she left that day, I told her I would take care of the plants, as kind of a symbol of my interest in, maintaining a healthy relationship with her, and that kind of the idea, like, and she even suggested it was if you could take care of a plant for a month, you may be able to graduate to taking care of some animals and so forth, So it was the idea of me demonstrating my ability to care. And I thought, okay, great. So then subsequently, I planted those in a big pot, which I placed right near the pool, overlooking the view. And one of those rose bushes died, and the other one seemed to flourish. And the day after her departure, a one of the flowers just bloomed, and it wasn't just one. It wasn't just. It was like a huge flower, and it bloomed that morning after her death. And just was like a really interesting sign. Which, Agnieszka, I don't know, your interpretation seemed to be fitting.
Well, it was interesting because it was so as I watched the one rose wither away over the last couple of weeks, since the time that she was here. um, Essentially, she gave Mike the roses when she decided not to stay with him and to to live a different life, not the life that they were hoping to have together. And one of the roses like really started dying, but by the time he planted it in a pot, within a couple days, it was like black. Like it wasn't just dry, but the branches were completely black. Whereas the other rose bush had like the flowers, both rose bushes had flowers to begin with, and they all fell off. But by the time they were in the plant pot together, the one was this black sort of creepy hand like thing, and the other one was this beautiful green leaves bush. And it was almost like the two lives, the choice between the two lives that Lou had, living this life, changing her ways, maybe letting go of addiction and stepping into a different lifestyle, a more healthy lifestyle, a more balanced lifestyle, or going back to being, doing what she always did in order to numb the pain of some long ago wound. And so it was almost like she chose the one life, but the other life kind of lives through in the rose. Like she's still here in a way. I don't know if I'm explaining this as well this time as I did last time. What did I say last time? It was way more poetic.
Well, I think it was a lot briefer too. You just said like, uh, one's her, one's you. You're blooming. She's done.
It's more like the two aspects of her, but yeah. Yeah, it was very interesting. But it's also interesting the things that you've said to me over the last couple of days, how, the idea of loving and losing and it being all worth it, the idea of living more because somebody else couldn't, living for both of you.
Well, the circumstance that I started in regard to getting involved with her was one in which I offered to help her, and I had offered to help her before because she had some serious problems in the past as well. That as being part of our community, kind of I got ear of the stuff, and offered to help. And in the past, she didn't accept the help, and things just got worse. And so this particular time, she did accept the help, and that's kind of what started a conversation that led to me understanding her much, much more deeply than I ever imagined. She was very, very honest with me, and you know that 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 being able to offer somebody help and them accepting that help and seeing that help like transform them, it's a very addicting uh, feeling. And I definitely was drawn into that, and then it just spiraled into a relationship that was incredibly loving. And you know um, I thought everything was going well, but this is kind of one of the things why understanding trauma is important, is because things come up that stir the trauma, And when that happens, it's, like another whole circumstance reappears, and that can really shift people's perception of what's possible and what isn't. And, when it comes right down to it, it's, to me, where awareness where I'm at with, the group of people I hang around with and the community of people I hang around with, we are a lot of aware. I mean, I am sucking up awareness daily with, the friends I hang around with these days. And to me, that is abundance, and I'm being introduced to abundance more and more each day. And, that's what I broadcast. And, she just was not, that was scary, I think, for her. And that led her on a different path.
Well, I wanted to touch on when you said like understanding trauma is really important. You're absolutely correct, because one of the, I say ironic, but it's not ironic in a funny way. It's just it seems strange, but safe and loving environments often are the stick that's stirring the pot. And it sounds like it sounds so contradictory, where like everything's going good, everything's loving, you're in a healthy relationship, things are good, you're becoming self-aware. Sadly, you have to become self-aware of your trauma, and that means facing it. And sometimes facing it can be absolutely terrifying, and so terrifying that you immediately turn back and run back the other way down the path that you just worked so hard to get away from, and you end up falling right back in that hole that you dug yourself out of just because it feels safer. And yeah.
And to some degree, I've got my own issues as well, which I've had to discover as well. It's not like none of us get out of this world without, some trauma. And I've got mine too. And it certainly, reared its ugly head in this situation as well, I think, because I just was blind to some of the things that, I don't know, that
I don't know if it was ugly. To me, what it looked like is that this event had triggered like a release or a breaking of a dam inside you, like inside yourself, where you've stored a lot of trauma from past experiences. At one point on Sunday, you were or I think it was on Sunday, you were talking about all the different experiences that you've had with death in the past. Like, you experienced these traumatic events when being in the military and seeing death really up close and personal through your experience there. And it was almost like, I was talking earlier today about Vipassana, and Vipassana is a 10-day silent meditation that you can go through. And on day about 4, certain barriers start breaking in your body, and you start really reliving experiences from the past. Or I started, I guess, in my body, and I started reliving the experiences in the past. And it seemed to me like on Sunday, that's exactly what was happening to you, where you started talking about these other experiences of death.
Yeah. Well, I was just a little bit over 1 year old when my younger brother was born, and subsequently he died, I think, at 4 months old. And so that's certainly something that has affected me in significant ways. And actually, Agnieszka, again, kind of reading the body language that I have, my psychosomatic kind of imprint, is one in which it reflects a feeling of being neglected as a young infant and child because of my mother's, depression due to losing a child, and me having to, just kind of exist in that environment.
You had to take care of yourself. You had to, like, you were 1.5 years, and essentially you had, it was hard to find the acceptance that you needed or the recognition.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah. So,
it's,
go ahead.
it's a pretty good sign, even though it doesn't feel good. But it is a good sign when you experience a traumatic event and you are processing it and your mind allows you to go back to the past. Not doesn't force you to go back there. It doesn't make you relive these things. That's the bad part. That's not healthy. If you can avoid it, it's best to avoid it. But as long as your mind will allow you to go back to the past and say, where else have I felt this feeling? When else have I felt this? Is this, am I reacting to something that's going on right now? Which of course you are, because something traumatic is happening right now. But maybe there's something more to it. Maybe this is a opportunity for me to acknowledge some of the other feelings that had to do with this same, like maybe this isn't the first time I felt this. And that allows for years and years of traumatic experiences to be released. This is, I think, why uh, survivors often re-traumatize themselves. They keep getting back into situations where they're prone to more traumatic, more and more events of traumatic. My words just got mixed up.
Yeah. I
They
understand where you're
expose
going with that.
themselves
Yeah.
to more traumatic events. I think with
Yes.
the hope that eventually they'll make sense of it, and then they don't have to repeat it anymore.
And just for everybody in the audience who may not know who Willow is a trauma consultant, and she's our partner on the other podcast, Raising Excellence, where we discuss things about, growth and consciousness and things like that. But here, she's the perfect person for this discussion because of her trauma consultant specialty.
Well, in regard to that, that is like as far as my adult relationships, they have been one in which they've been troubled, and it's just a repeat after repeat after repeat. And it's, to some degree.
She's already invited you for sessions. You don't have to convince her. No, I'm just joking.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to, explain it.
I'm just joking. Go on.
But the thing that took place and transpired, when the relationship happened was, I felt loved, and I felt like it gave me kind of permission to love myself too. And that's something that I really, going through kind of some of the things that I've gone through in the past few years. I just, was having a real hard time loving myself. And that made a difference. And honestly, man, this is one of the things that makes me so grateful for this the relationship, even though it ended the way it did. Is I feel like I was restored to life. I was like just not really enjoying living, even though I live in a great place. I'll tell you that much. I live. I still wasn't taking advantage of it. And
it was almost like since your ex left, you were becoming more and more isolated and like cutting yourself off from the world more and more and more until you were almost never leaving this beautiful, gorgeous paradise of a house, which I can't really blame you for. But at the same time, your interpersonal relationships suffered because of it.
Yeah.
And your relationship with yourself suffered because of it.
Definitely.
Well, isolation is a pretty useful coping mechanism. A lot of people, especially the younger you are when you've experienced trauma, oftentimes you're left alone to deal with it. And therefore, being alone means safety to your nervous system, which allows you to actually be able to process a lot of your emotions. So isolation in itself is not necessarily a bad thing. And it's encouraging to see that, you isolate for a little bit and then you come back out and you're willing to talk about it. That's healthy. That's healthy isolation. It's not always like when when they seclude into their little hermit shell. It's not always bad. Sometimes they just need to feel safe for a second and then build up the courage to come back out. And as long as you keep coming back out and you keep dipping your toes into that water and testing to see if it's safe, you're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, but he was stuck. He was stuck in the house. He was stuck in his room. Like, you know what I mean? Almost like psychologically stuck. And then this deeply troubled, beautiful woman stepped in and breathed brought some colorful pool toys and gave him some mugs with cuts. You know what I mean? Like breathe some life into this sort
We
of
went
less
swimming.
and less active life.
We were
Michael.
exploring Acapulco. We were doing stuff. It was getting outside the house. Doing a lot of fun stuff. Every day she was making my day, and it was just wonderful. And I transitioned back into living, and to me it felt great. I felt like I'm gonna, on top of the world again.
But
So
she
in
just
that regard,
resuscitated you and then left.
yeah. So that's what makes me want to move forward and motivates me to honor her death, honor her life, honor her contribution to me, and do something special. And certainly, one of the things that we definitely shared was loving Acapulco, man. And this is, one of the hardest things to let go of is how much she loved Acapulco. 'Cause- And all the things she knew about it, it was just it made it such an adventure. But I'm gonna love the hell out of Acapulco.
And hopefully yourself,
Yeah.
which is pretty admirable. A lot of people get really hung up, and rightfully so, in the grief and the negative feelings, because there's a lot. I'm not gonna lie, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. It's not all wonderful feelings. It's deep. When you feel you feel the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. There is no um, middle ground. It's very intense, but a lot of people can't usually see past the grief to honor someone's life and honor the things that, as much as they were struggling, obviously, they still brought amazing things to the world and brought out this part of you that you didn't even know that you could love, or maybe that was, there to love. Um, and deciding to continue your life wanting to feel that way, that is probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest gifts that you can give another person, is knowing that they had an impact on your life. Um, it's an amazing gift.
Amen.
Which rose do you want to be?
The one that smells good.
Hopefully the one that's cared for,
Right.
the one that's healthy and cared for. And
But even like when you said, Michael, the day after she passed, and you said, I will water this rose for the rest of my life every single day, and it was such a strong commitment to caring for something outside of yourself. And at the same time, it seemed to me like it was a sign of you awakening your own personal power. You stood strongly in that decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I've explored in my life is really kind of the ups and downs. I've had some great ups and I've had some great downs, and to some degree, I having those really intense, painful feelings means there's intense, wonderful feelings possible, and I, I certainly feel like I've experienced some of those too. So but it's sometimes you need to remember before you remember, or like get smacked in the face, and then you remember, oh shit, there is some good stuff. There's some really good stuff out there. It's worth, waking up every day, working your ass off for something you want.
What would Dennis say if you were here and not sleeping right now? He would say, everything is perfect. This is the perfect moment.
Well, I think the way, and I love Dennis, the stuff that he's given me as far as some of the advice over the past few days has been really tremendously helpful. By the way, there's a couple books that he recommends. I think one of them is called Journey of the Souls, which I've been listening to, and it really gives you a much bigger perspective on what may be out there. Depending on where you're at with your religion or whatever, or your beliefs. But for me, it spoke a lot. And one of the things he said is, it doesn't really matter if it's true or if it's false or if it's just made up or whatever it is. It just means that it's possible, and that's good enough. And it's possible. I don't know. There's a few books that I think of when it comes to how I feel about the attitude towards good and evil, and heaven and hell and all that kind of stuff. And Walter Russell's The Secret of Light is one of those. Certainly, one of the books that I think James True recommended was The People of the Lie, is another one where it talks about, is there really any evil at all? As far as he can tell, over 25 years of working with some of the craziest, evilest patients in the world, his conclusion was, no, it's just ignorance.
Everybody's a hero in their own story.
Yeah. And, with all the trauma, we've got a lot of blindness. So it's like, when you combine ignorance with blindness, a lot of bad stuff can happen. And, to some degree, the last book is, Alfred Korzybski's Manhood of Humanity, which suggests that, like our nature is to have experiences and be able to explain those experiences to other people. And when we see the value that we bring to the lives of others, and others see the value that we bring to their lives, then it clicks in that shit, peaceful living is the way to go. And, we can't even get past like hitting each over the head at the moment.
Let's break.
I mean, we got a lot of potential, to say the least. And it's just about how we think.
So we're
And
about
feel.
halfway. Oh, sorry. And feel. Yeah, I think feel emotions are guideposts on the road of life, right? But what I was going to say is we're about halfway through this conversation, and I really honor you for being vulnerable and being willing to speak about this very sensitive and very fresh topic, and share with us the wisdom that comes from this kind of experience.
Yeah, well, I hope that this is kind of like what we were experimenting with in Raising Excellence, is trying to demonstrate to people that there's a better way to live, and that is to examine your life and find out what's right and what's wrong, what's valuable and what's harmful. And in a lot of cases, the most harmful character in your life is yourself. And it's so much better to work on yourself. And, to me, this is, an opportunity to kind of crowdsource my freaking problems out in front of everybody, and
spiritual revolution. So we've been doing Raising Excellence, the podcast Raising Excellence, for about a year now. It's almost our 1 year birthday. And in that show, every week we share new tools for, becoming more of who you are, stepping more into your power, creating the reality that you want to live in and all that. But spiritual revolution goes a little bit deeper, where we can speak more, like less about psychology and more about the spiritual aspect of it, you know?
Yeah.
And the other thing that's unique about spiritual revolution is that we have audience participation. So I mean, Willow kind of a co-host today because she's one of our partners anyway.
Well, I did want to
But
make it. I did want to give a shout out to Owen, because actually Owen, one of the things that he, you know, enlightened me of is kind of the Enneagram kind of personality thing, and then kind of understanding regression and progression and how that works. And, you know, for me, you know, and this also kind of speaks to this situation is I've always, you know, I'm a number 8 on the Enneagram, or at least that's my primary characteristic. And it is the challenger. You know, I love challenges. And, you know, this was a challenge, and my life has been a challenge. There's no two ways about it. I just keep putting bigger and tougher barriers in my way. And I guess to some degree, you know, there's a book called The Obstacle is the Way. And it's like, you know, to a lot of people, when it comes to like what their expertise is, you know, demonstrating that is challenging, you know, and it's like putting bigger and bigger problems in front of yourself, you know, and seeing if you can handle them.
Maybe the next challenge that you should approach is finding peace. Often it can be the most difficult challenge that we face because it doesn't register as a challenge. You're like, oh yeah, I'll find peace when all the challenges are done, and then just people balk at the idea of challenging themselves to find a peaceful nature and just peace of mind.
Yeah,
that
well, I
thing
mean,
that Dennis says about everything being perfect in every single moment.
yeah, let me talk about that for a second, because I want to talk about the peace thing, but I also want to talk about what Dennis said. And in regard to the past, you really can't do anything but accept everything as perfect, because it's in the past. It's it's just there. There's no changing it. So just let it be perfect, as far as I'm concerned, and then learn from that. But in regard to the other thing about pursuing peace, man, I am so much more peaceful than I was when I first got to Acapulco. It's incredible how calm I am today versus how I used to be. You know, I was super intense, and even you know, I kind of I retired from my day job, you know, in my late 30s, and so I spent a lot of time, you know, kind of digging into stuff, because I retired and I had the money to basically do what the hell I wanted to do. So I spent a lot of time kind of investigating stuff, plus going through some other depression that I had. But needless to say, I'm still angry. You know, all the stuff that's out there, it just makes you angrier and angrier and angrier, you know. And it's like, up until now, experiencing Acapulco and the kind of the environment that it has, plus you add in autonomy and kind of really taking responsibility for yourself, and also understanding that um, you know, this is not a scarcity problem. This is a misunderstanding that there is scarcity and that abundance is the reality. And really kind of understanding that uh, delivers a great deal more peace to me. And now it's just about practicing it, you know, and that's kind of my theme for ethical emergence is, you know, daily practice. You know, practice is what makes perfect. And you know, if you include the things that you want out of your life into your daily practice, you're going to get them. It's just that simple. So in that regard, I'm practicing peace, and I'm doing it better every day. I feel like a lot of the things that made the relationship so special was a lot of the things that I did differently than I had done before, because I learned from all the shows we did from Raising Excellence, and we did the documentary, or the series. I don't know if it's a documentary yet, maybe, but the artistry of loving relationships. I really felt like that made an impact on me, on just giving me a lot more appreciation for the moment, you know.
So what I was going to say before is, are you ready for some audience questions? Maybe people have questions for you.
Sure.
Do you guys have questions for him? For God's sake, somebody have questions.
You're supposed to like salt the audience. So if you're asking for questions, at least somebody pops up.
I have a question.
Yes, sure.
How do you feel about God, non-denominationally speaking?
Well, I was raised Catholic, and I experienced quite a few different denominations over the years. Either my parents switching stuff. My father was born a Lutheran and then returned to being a Lutheran, but on the way became a Mormon for a while and kind of practiced some other things. So I got to see some of those different practices and stuff. But I would say that, again, it's like Walter Russell's book, The Secret of Light, that kind of really puts it all together for me, as far as one particular book that I thought was probably most influential in my spiritual belief is that book. And in it, it's just everything is light, and there is nothing else. And, if you understand how light works, there's the visible spectrum, and then there's a whole lot else. And just because we can't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. So, there is like this, and when it comes to the source, it's kind of the Hindu kind of belief that he kind of defers to, but it's it's essentially us and something else, but it's together. It's all the intelligence. It's all the things that it's everything. I don't know. It's that's one of those things that's hard to explain, but how that's manifested, do we have angels and all that kind of stuff? Maybe. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I guess what I mean by the question is, for me, I had to develop my relationship with God before I could have a healthy relationship with another person. And so that's what I had to do. I had to take God by the hand and go out into the world with God. So,
well, in some cases, that could represent the subconscious mind.
Yeah, or the inner self, right? Because God is the spark that is within you.
Or you want to call it the soul. Yeah, could be that too. Or could be something else. God is a very difficult word to define clearly, and I think this is another reason that English is a slave language, is because they have different meanings for the same word, and it confuses people when one person says something and they think it means something else, and there's utter confusion. And that's why you should read Korzybski's work, by the way. But I definitely feel like my pursuit of communicating with my own subconscious and kind of reprogramming myself and befriending that other side of me, maybe the shadow sides of me, as well as all the other things that are kind of stuck inside my subconscious mind, or whatever you want to call it, unconscious mind. I also feel like I have a greater awareness of what's going on around me, because in a lot of cases, my subconscious mind will kind of give me some ideas about things that are completely outside of what I would be thinking about. But I've kind of trained myself to journal. And when I kind of go into that meditation, I just end up writing a bunch of stuff that when I end up reading it is kind of, enlightening.
Nice. Good question, Joanna. Who else would like to ask Michael something deep and meaningful, possibly spiritual, maybe poetic?
Yeah, speaking of poetic, that is definitely something that she inspired in me. And you know, uh, being that Pablo's here, he's the one that did actually get me aware of poetry. And but I really wasn't too inspired. I was just like, yeah, I like it, and I see it in the lyrics and stuff like that, in music, and I can appreciate it. But I'm not creative at all when it comes to that stuff. And then lo and behold, man, it was just magically coming out of me. And I thought, wow, I'm actually understanding stuff better because I'm writing poetry, and communicating better because I'm writing poetry. So shout out to Pablo for that one too.
Pablo, can you chime in? I would like to ask you a question or three.
Hey,
Hey.
appreciate the shout out, Michael, and appreciate the. I came a little late into your story, but from what I gathered, it's definitely encouraging to see someone be so, transparent and opening. So thank you for that. But what's up? What you have for me?
So how does poetry, Pablo, for you, how does poetry help you deal with these kind of strong emotions and extreme situations like the one Michael's been going through in the last week?
Yeah, poetry has been very helpful. I've actually kind of been somewhat detached from it lately. I guess partially because I felt like my poetry was taking a plunge into the darkness, and I was feeling. You can say hi, puppy. So Mary wants to say hi.
Hello.
So yeah, I actually took like a little break because I don't want to keep going back into that realm. But in that time, like that, observing that really helped me understand what I was feeling, and it gave me a broader lens. It just gave me I guess you could say it's like a release valve. It was a release valve for me, and it overflows when I'm inspired and when the emotions are present. And it's funny, today I was like in the shower, and for a while today I became kind of inspired to write. I didn't write anything, but I think ironically, instead of writing poetry, I told myself while I was in the shower, I was like, I should definitely write a journal entry. And that's something that I've been hearing you guys talk a lot about. And I guess in a sense that's kind of poetic in itself, but yeah, poetry has been very helpful. And just being able to express and release all those feelings is a tool. It's one of those tools that become really helpful in times of traumatic and just emotional experiences, right? It's just, whether it be a relationship that sparks. I mean, that was my spark, to get back to you, Michael. Like, my wife was the spark of it was my first muse. Like, that was my introduction to poetry. And then it evolved into many different things, and now I'm trying to see where it takes me today, because I know it's going to come back up. It's just a matter of time.
And I love your poetry evenings that, promote poetry among the autonomy crowd. I think they're great, by the way. But see, I think that when we're writing poetry, even just the searching for the right adjective can really hone what we're actually feeling, because that's something that Willow taught me through speaking, I don't know, over the last couple of years that I've known her, through speaking on various different topics, that sometimes we're feeling something, but we're not really identifying it correctly. We might be feeling angry, but we're actually sad, but we're not really connecting with the sad because we're putting all our attention in the resentment or anger or whatever. And so in writing poetry, the honing of the feeling, the finding the right adjective or the right verb can really like focus your attention on how you're actually feeling right now.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah, absolutely. It almost becomes sometimes it becomes what's the word I'm trying to allude to? You become like a channel. Like sometimes I will come up with an adjective or a word that like I don't even know what it means, and it just fits like a glove. And yeah, it's always an interesting thing when that happens.
That's funny. I do that with herbs. Somebody will be like, "Oh, this is my issue," and I'll be like, "Oh, you need to take this herb," and I don't even know what it does, and then I look it up and it works.
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm actually trying to look for something I'm reading in this book. There's actually a question that Lee brought up during the last Renaissance Revolution. He was like, you know what? I can't exactly remember how he posed the question, but it was like, how do we, where does art come from, or something to that nature? And in the book that I'm reading, it had mentioned like, I guess to tie it into spirituality, right? That art is the way that the spirit speaks into the physical plane. It said it a lot more eloquent in the book, and I'm trying to look for it. I can't find it. But it's definitely something I want to share for the next open mic, because I thought it kind of brings me back to that question that Lee presented. And just poetry and art is just a beautiful bridge between the planes of spirituality and like the physical plane.
When is the next open mic, Pablo?
It's coming Saturday.
This coming Saturday? Oh, we're gonna make a whole week of it.
Yeah, this coming Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern time.
Nice.
Yeah. Thanks for the plug-in.
You're welcome. So the rest of you guys have any questions like for Michael? Because, I think it's, the lessons that the way he's processing it, it's very deep and he's really already tuning into the lessons. And I think that's cool. Admirable.
Well, it's with some great coaching and, having a year's worth of Raising Excellence to kind of figure out that, because I'll tell you, this is one of the things that we're doing here. With Raising Excellence, we're practicing what we're preaching on a weekly basis, And
This wasn't
we've been
supposed
doing
to
it
be
for a
plug.
year. And I'm telling you, it's impacted my life in such a positive way that, like what Richard says in regard to intellectual self-defense, how you how you prepare yourself for living is, is right in line with what's going to happen, and if you can't wish for less problems. What you got to wish for is more skills and abilities, because when the problems come and you can handle them, you're a valuable person. And that's another beautiful thing about what this is all about, and what autonomy is all about, is like really kind of delivering that for each person in this community, so that they can really become that skillful person that provides abundance in their own particular way. And we all benefit because we kind of help them get along the way to where he needs to be or she needs to be. And, you know, to me, that's kind of what I'm dedicating myself to as well, is like making that happen. And certainly raising excellence is one of those things. Certainly being a guest on this show is another. But yeah, I'm going to be like an Energizer bunny when it comes to improving.
You already are. You've already done a lot of work on yourself since I've met you. So you're well on your way.
Well, funny. We were talking about how lazy I am earlier today. So
We're
I'm
all
not
lazy.
perfect. I'm not perfect.
But you do realize that if I notice that you're lazy, that means laziness is within me. Right?
All right.
I wouldn't notice something that it's not within me.
If nobody has any questions, I've got something here, because this is something that this is an example of how my subconscious kind of clues me in, and how it kind of gives me some clues. I had a dream that included her, and it had a particular, like a video was playing at some point. And I knew what the video was because I've seen the video before, but I couldn't hear the music. I didn't understand what the words were. So when I got up, I just started writing, you know. And I'm not going to read all the things that I wrote here, but I'll read some of them. Well, I don't know if I can read these, but they foretold kind of some of the stuff that I was going to have to go through. But all right, here's one that she can prove her detachment to care by finding the thing that matters the most to the one she loves and destroying it. Now, when I wrote this, we were just really starting off the relationship, and I actually brought this to her attention. I read the whole thing, and you know, kind of went through it with her, and to me, this was one of those honest moments that you know, I would really encourage people to have honest moments with people as much as possible. There's another thing in my ethical emergence course: meaningful communication. But it was a very meaningful conversation that we had, where we really looked at some, you know, some of the things that she saw in herself that was not pleasant. And I just, you know, it was just really magical to, you know, experience that kind of honesty. But I don't think that would have been possible if I didn't have all those things kind of in line to have that conversation. And so, you know, that's that perfect past coming to play that I got to learn from.
But perfect past doesn't exist. The only thing that's perfect is the present moment.
Well, the only thing we can act upon is the present moment. I don't know if it's perfect.
According to Dennis, it's perfect.
Well, that's where maybe we disagree.
But maybe we just haven't touched the perfection of the present moment yet, and it takes like distance to be able to see the perfection of it in the background of reality.
Well, you know, imperfect turns to perfect. I think that's kind of a magical thing to observe and rejoice in, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, last minutes. Does anybody have a burning question? from our listeners, for Michael.
Man, you are breaking the rule that you're always telling me I am breaking.
I know. I know. I heard myself doing it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, because like one of the things that I think is really a real plus that I have is certainly I've got, Willow and you and Dennis to kind of bounce ideas off of, and I've, luckily for you guys got the inside track on my feelings as this whole thing transpired, and when I was happy, I was super happy, and you got to see that too. But that's kind of one of the other things that I would highly recommend people do is develop that circle of people around you that are the ones that can help you the most. If I wasn't so screwed up and had the expertise I do around me, I would have been. I know what happens when that was the life before that was all screwed up and effed up, and one trauma after another kind of circumstance, because I didn't understand how to improve myself and how to deal with the circumstances better and seek counsel. I've learned so much about myself in the past week, and certainly Agnieszka has contributed immensely. Willow has contributed immensely. Owen has contributed immensely. Pablo has definitely contributed. Justin has contributed to my life in this past week. That makes a big difference, and that's certainly another plus of autonomy, and the circle of people that you put around yourself.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, Michael. I know those deep depths, those pits, very well, and just hearing, just sharing that transparency. I'm really glad that I joined in and was able to hear that, and just get that slice of encouragement. So I just wanted to say that. So I appreciate that. Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
this, Agnieszka.
Thank you for being here, Pablo.
Yeah, this was Agnieszka's idea, and I just said, yeah, I'll do it.
I wanted to honor your experience and honor Lou.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm hoping this is going to do. I think, and honestly, like what Pablo says to me, that means that this was perfect. So, well done.
All right. Then this is perfect. Then we are complete.
The perfect show. We finally got one.
Thank you very much, everybody, for being here for this experience. And oh no, I lost internet again. Sorry, I think my internet was messing up. I was just saying thank you very much, everybody, for being here and for sharing this experience with us. And I really appreciate your attendance and your support. So thank you.
Thank you. See you in the next one.
See you in the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And thank you, Michael.